Welcome to Future Customer Value, where global thought leaders share their career-defining moments.
Mary, thanks so much for joining the Future Customer Value podcast.
Hey, Sagar, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great. I'm excited for our chat today.
Me too.
Great. Well, before we dive in, for the audience, I want to give you all a brief intro into Mary's journey. She's had quite a successful and interesting one across startups and large companies we've all heard of. She started her career off at SuccessFactors, ended up running the professional services organization, and was there for the big acquisition by SAP. I think that's a rare experience a lot of people don't get to be a part of. So curious to dive into that. After spending a couple of years at SAP, Mary was part of another startup called Glint that got acquired by LinkedIn. So another startup to acquisition journey, which is going to be awesome. And then most recently, before your role today, you were at Involve.ai, where Mary is the chief customer officer, helping to drive go-to-market and great customer experiences, which leads you to your role today, which I'd love to hear about. You're the president of HRIZONS, which is a HR tech-enabled services business that's helping companies implement HR solutions. So before we dive in, Mary, would love to have you speak about what your role is today at HRIZONS and what you're up to.
Yeah, well, thanks for that intro. I should have you intro me all the time. It sounds way better. So I joined HRIZONS just a couple of months ago, actually, to start a new division in employee experience. So after spending about 2 decades focused on building customer experience and all of the post-sale structures and processes for B2B tech companies, essentially, I mostly worked for HR tech. So I was able to see firsthand the impact of the right solutions and the right company cultures on employee experience and employee engagement, and the impact that has on the company itself and on their customers. And so what we're doing at HRIZONS right now is applying really that, everything we've learned across focusing on customer centricity to apply it to employee centricity, and really helping companies put their employees at the center of their business with their customers.
I love it. I think it feels like a great culmination of a lot of experiences you've had over the past 15 years or so. So it's awesome. Mary's also a professor of practice at Michigan State University, running the CXM program of the master's degree, right?
Yeah, go green. So yeah, it's the first ever master's in customer experience management. So for folks looking for an advanced degree, oftentimes MBA is sort of one of the only ways to go from a business perspective. Of course, there's industrial organizational psychology, but now there's customer experience management, which is the opportunity to really focus on all of the customer operations and strategies and measures, and really taking the customer experience across the entire organization. So that's really what the master's focuses on, is how do you innovate and help companies build customer centricity to grow their business, become more innovative, and grow revenue.
Awesome. Great. Well, I would love to kick off our episode here with one of your first experiences in post-sales at SuccessFactors. And this was pre-SAP acquisition. And you were telling me about how when you were in the shoes of managing renewals coming up for the first time with multi-year deals, right? Large deals, many stakeholders. Talk to us about that world. Tell us some stories and aha moments you have about customer value when you were in the shoes of CS at SuccessFactors.
Yeah, well, I actually, it's kind of funny. I was a customer of SuccessFactors, one of the first 10 customers of SuccessFactors, which I had no idea how small and startup-y the company actually was, when I was a customer. But I loved it so much, and the impacts that it was having on the organization that I was with, that I decided to join. So it was really in the early days, pre-IPO, pre-acquisition. And one of the very first, software as a service companies in HR, if not the first. And so it was really a time where we were transitioning from all of the on-prem kind of, product-centric and really company-centric focuses of organizations, technology providers, to, which I like to call building houses, to renting apartments, which was much more, an opportunity for business leaders to just say, I don't like my landlord. I don't like the service I'm getting, so I'm going to move to a different provider. And the on-premise world basically provided implementation services and support services for post-sale. So when SaaS came around, all the market really knew in terms of customer delivery had been professional services and support, right? Implement the customer, turn them over to support, and, good luck, we'll be here if you need us. But what happened with SaaS is you had to start reselling the value every day of your solution because customers could make the decision more easily to leave. And so there was this aha moment when it came time for renewal that people were like, wait a minute, who's been reaching out to and watching over this customer? Because they went from implementation to support. They really haven't filed any support tickets. Are they even adopting? And so there was this real kind of aha, we need a role, we need a thread who can follow the customer throughout the entire journey and make sure that they're getting value from the solution, that they're adopting, and that when it comes time for the renewal, or even before that for an upsell, right, we know what's going on with the customer, we know how to provide value. And so that was really the rise of customer success, right? And then account management and renewals teams. And so there was this opportunity to kind of shape the customer experience and customer delivery in a way that had never been done before, because the role wasn't recognized as necessary really before SaaS. So that was an exciting part of the journey at SuccessFactors.
Got it. One quick follow-up question there is, how did you start to engage in that value conversation and transform from just being an implementation services onboarding team to equipping CSMs to have that discovery mindset?
Yeah, we did form, the first customer success team whose responsibility it was to follow the customer from the time they were sold through implementation and then ongoing, right? And support really became just the technical aspect. So the CSM was responsible for making sure post implementation and the services team had, met all the criteria, that the customer actually launched successfully, that they were adopting the solution. And so the enablement for the CSM really became around looking at the customer's business context, looking at everything that sales had learned about the customer and transition to services, right? And then sometimes it falls off, which we want to make sure doesn't happen. And so really training the team to get involved in the very beginning and understand the journey of that customer. Why are they purchasing? What do they want to get out of it? How do we bring them value through success criteria? And the CSM's role was to make sure that, throughout and post implementation, the customer objectives and the success criteria would be met, and then continuing that journey with the customer. It didn't start out smoothly, the way that I just described the role, but it was an evolution, starting knowing that we needed to put someone in, during implementation and follow them through was a learning journey. But that's how the role took shape at SuccessFactors. Makes
sense. Been hearing that resurface its head now too, right? Which is you have to put some business context, otherwise you're going to lose the customer. That's great. So let's move on to the next stage of your journey here at SAP. And the challenges and the scale is on a whole different level, right? When you move into that level of an organization. And you had mentioned that what was really critical at SAP was uniting the delivery model, right? Aligning internal products and stakeholders with external products and stakeholders. And I'm curious, what did you find and learn that was working really well? What roles had synergies together in a big organization to add outsized and create outsized value to your customers?
So really, really great question. Really great learnings there. So with the acquisition by SAP. I had been Chief Customer Officer at SuccessFactors and then responsible for kind of all of the post-sale journey at acquisition. And we were the first cloud company that SAP had acquired. We had the opportunity to help shape what does cloud mean within SAP, which was really exciting, also very daunting. But very quickly, I like to say overnight, because that's what it felt like, I took responsibility for the Ariba company as well that had been acquired, as well as the legacy internal by design cloud solution for SAP. So we brought 3 business units together overnight and called it SAP Cloud. And really the goal was to find scale and synergies and be able to bring, the customer experience together across those business solutions. The first line of thinking from leadership was, well, if you have a CSM working on SuccessFactors, they can just learn and pick up Ariba and the by design product and just, manage the relationship with the customer that way. While the thinking, could make sense if their role was truly only to just provide reactive, be a point of contact and find other resources, that might work. But what we found is CSMs have a domain expertise and a product and process understanding along with the customer's business line and the key stakeholder in that business. That is really hard to replicate. It's a lot for a CSM to learn multiple products and engage with multiple stakeholders. For example, the SuccessFactors solution, the CSM would be talking to the CHRO and folks in HR. When it was the Ariba product, they'd be talking to procurement and the CPO and helping build flight plans. It was a network business instead of, an employee-focused solution. And so all of a sudden, you're expecting your talent, your employees to understand all of these different business models and all of the different sort of revenue streams and all, right? That is a lot and sort of a recipe for disaster when you start thinking about their goal is to focus on adoption and the value, that you're bringing in the relationship. And so if you can't have the time to really deep dive into that domain and really talk the talk with the key stakeholders, the role is less effective. And that's what we found. And so really even up to the director level, it starts to get a little bit, muddy at director and above, where you can find synergies and bring the business lines together. But truly, like frontline manager, CSMs, account managers, they really need to be kind of your SWAT team around that business line. And that's what we learned and found was most successful in terms of adoption and really being able to upsell effectively, predict, renewals, get in front of our customers, be proactive. And so that was a big aha. The good news is that we were able to learn those lessons pretty quickly with customers who had multi-solutions already. And so we could, before we grew each of the business lines, we were able to put the model in place with the domain expertise that would really allow us to grow successfully. But it was a big learning.
Yeah. So you mentioned the director and above had the cross business line engagement. Was that at the SAP level or was that at the customer director and above? Like you had somebody at SAP who was across multiple business lines?
Good question. Yeah, it was at SAP. Within the customer, and every business is different, right? But for SAP, all of the business lines were completely different businesses with different stakeholders and decision makers. So CRM, we were selling to the CRO. Ariba, we were selling to the CPO, and then procurement. And then SuccessFactors, we were selling to the CHRO. So we effectively were in a position to bring a whole bunch of business units, together internally and provide, analytics and solutions that would go across. But that was really hard too, by the way, be in a position to do that and figure that out. But yeah, so that's where kind of the domain, that's where I think you need to think about how you structure your organization is who are the key stakeholders in your customer? How do you build a relationship with them? How do you ensure that you can speak their language, right? And when it comes time for delivery, it kind of follows that same pattern. So if all of your products are sold to, the chief customer officer or to the CHRO, that's an easier way to unify teams across products than across business lines with multiple stakeholders, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes total sense. One more follow-up question there, because this has been coming up a lot in conversations with CCOs, is at an organizational level where you have multiple business lines, multiple stakeholders, multiple executives that you're selling to, how did you track the perception of value, across each stakeholder? Because they all probably feel differently about the solutions that they're using, and they have different needs. So was there a framework or a way to capture that in a scalable way, or was it really bespoke, per customer?
The short answer is no. I wish I'd have had foresight like way long years and years ago. The reality is we had indirect measures, right? Where we gauged customer satisfaction, NPS, we tracked time to value, which we measured through customer success criteria. We measured like community engagement, advocacy, things like that. But they were all kind of indirect measures of, oh, sure, the customer must be healthy and happy because they just spoke, on one of our webinars, or, but the challenge always was, are we getting to the right stakeholder in meetings to talk about value? And a lot of times the QBRs, what I like to call value reviews now, the decision maker wouldn't show up, because they bought the solution, handed it to their team and said, okay, you guys run it. But without them in the room, right, when it comes time to make a decision and where you cut budget and things, if they don't really know the value and if the internal team can't articulate that, then the solution isn't safe. So getting them in the room and understanding their mindset is so important.
I could not agree more. That resonates deeply, having been in similar shoes selling to large enterprise customers. Awesome. Well, want to keep it moving here and connect a couple themes that you've talked about, which is, and I believe you maybe teach on this to some extent in your course, and that's your role today at HRIZONS. But can you talk about the connection between these two dimensions of value, right? And there's another podcast guest, Ezra Zimbler, who runs customer success at LinkedIn. He wrote a great article on this. So there's two dimensions of value: the internal justification of value to your executive team. That's employees and their leaders need to make sure that they're driving internal value. And then there's the external value, customer value, and making sure that your customers are achieving their business outcomes. So can you talk about the mapping here? Like, how do those two things stay in sync? Are they mutually exclusive? Can they be in sync? And how do we make that happen, right, at scale in organizations?
It's such a great question, and it'd be great if there was just like a single solution and technology that would allow you to do this. What I've found works very successfully is kind of twofold, and it involves handoffs and documentation and a templatized approach, which is from the time the salesperson is capturing the reason the customer is buying your solution or services, right, and helping define the success criteria. That gets handed off to the post-sale team, to the CSM, but it doesn't stop there, right? So it's documented in the CRM. It flows over to a CSP if you have one, or maybe stays in CRM. People can leverage it, but it has to come into a customer facing delivery as well. So I've used slides, essentially, right? Presentations that go from the sales cycle to post-sale, and then it lives on in value reviews. So the reason for buying, the maturity or evolution of the customer solution over time is all documented in this value review. And so the very first thing that gets reviewed with the customer at the beginning of every value review, hopefully quarterly, is that it's a reminder of why they purchased, where we're headed, what are the goals, and how far have we come. Because a lot of times customers forget where they started, right? Like it's so bad. We didn't have a place to document this before, and now we do, right? But you sort of lose sight of that because you're working toward the final outcome, right? The main goals. Yeah. So reminding customers, taking the time in those value reviews to say, look at what we've done together against the success criteria. This is how far we've come. And now here's what's next, right? Next steps. That approach between the documentation, having a good format for the value reviews, and then again, making sure the right people are in the room, has been a great way to keep the internal communications and the customer, value communications aligned. And then, of course, as things change and their business changes, those should be documented as part of the value reviews as well, and brought back and updated in your CRM or CSP.
How many times does an internal champion change, or the executive buyer who bought your solution change, or the CSM or account manager changes? And now, if you don't have that documentation, it's this, there's no connection point, and it's
that never happens.
That
never change, right? Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right, though, that documentation has saved, I think, I've seen it be so valuable in two ways. One, your project contact or your main stakeholder at the customer changes, you can bring in all of and get them up to speed. This is why you purchased. Here's what we were planning to do. Here's how far we've come. And so the admin or program owner can take over really quickly. The other piece of it is that value is documented. So when the decision maker does change, you as a CSM have the opportunity to say, oh, by the way, here's a packet, right, of really digestible information on what we've done together and where we're headed. Let's meet and talk about, does this align to your vision? So that documentation is so critical internally and externally.
For sure. You need to memorialize it on both sides, so you can have that foundation to build on. Otherwise, the house is going to start to crumble, to use your previous analogy. Love it. So let's switch gears again here and talk about what's on everybody's minds, literally, and it's AI, right? But I think you have a unique perspective on it, which I really appreciate. Everybody's talking about generative AI. But can you talk about how you see the application of AI within post-sales organizations, and why that outlook is maybe not as talked about as much right now?
Yeah, I think that AI's been, at work for quite some time in the back end of products or with capabilities that, if leveraged appropriately, you can really gain, some great insights to take the right action with customers. So but the challenge is that a lot of the data lives in very siloed places, right? So we're collecting so much data on our customers, but it lives in lots of different places, and we have AI, but the AI is only working on a portion of the data. So that's been the challenge. But what I see the real value of AI is, content generation is great. It will add scale, gives people, starting point. That's great. But the real value of AI that I see is that you can do the pattern matching and trending across millions of data points, in seconds, that the human, data scientists just could never, get to. And it can find and uncover relationships with data, customer behavior from the time that they purchase the solution to the time that they launch, things like that, looking across when they upsell, what's the difference between customers who've churned and customers who've, upsold in terms of the onboarding time frame, those kinds of things. We have that data. So the ability for AI to kind of unify and look across all that data and find those connection points and be able to then say, these triggers are the difference between a successful customer and an unsuccessful customer. That is so powerful. And the opportunity then to take that information, give it to the customer facing teams to say, this is when you reach out to a customer and address an upsell. This is the time to reach out and talk about adoption. Here's a new feature that will help when the customer gets to this point. And so those are things that AI can uncover that it would take data scientists potentially, a really long time, if ever, to uncover, because the human element is you have to define what you're looking for, right?
Yes.
AI is just like, hey, let me just find whatever relationships might be out there between data you may never even think would be related, right? So that's where I think the huge power of AI can be, and really get to predictive. So we can get ahead of our customers and really figure out, here's what they're going to need. And then you can not only be proactive, right, but you can personalize that experience as well.
I'll be really curious to see which data points bubble to the top, because there's so many right now of what you could be tracking and which ones prove to be the highest predictive capability of retention and churn, right? Is it onboarding? Is it usage? Is it outcome mapping? And that's going to be a journey that we're all on, but it'll be a lot of learning for all of us.
Yeah, so it'll be great when we have a repository of all of these insights that can be shared across industries and across,
The AI benchmarks report for post sales coming out in 2025.
Love it. Okay, you heard it here first.
You heard it here first, yeah. We got to write that report together, Mary, before somebody else does.
I'm in.
Awesome. Well, we're going to move on to the next and audience fan favorite section here, which is the rapid fire questions. So the rules of the game here, Mary, are we've got 8 questions, and I want you to respond with the first thought that comes into your mind, and max 2 words, right? It's going to be a little bit tough, but I know you can do it. So we're going to kick off with, what is the best metric of success for CS?
Advocacy.
Advocacy. That is, never heard that one before. It's great. What about the worst metric of success for CS?
Oh gosh. Portfolio size.
All right. It's coming from a lot of experience, I can tell. Most underrated part of CS?
Oh, for sure. Revenue impact.
Retweet. Most overrated part of CS?
Subjective health scoring.
Talked about that one quite a bit. All right. Current state of CS?
Oh, underutilized.
Future of CS?
Predictive.
All right. What is the best CS book or podcast?
Okay, selfishly, I have to make a plug for Goodbye Churn, Hello Growth, which is my book published a year ago.
Oh, awesome.
But other than that, Gene Bliss, CCO 2.0 is really good. Wayne McCullough's 7 Pillars, really good. And Rod Shirkus, the newer Chief Customer Officer playbook, is really good as well.
Great. I'll have to check out your book. I didn't realize you had written one. Let's close with this question. What is the best community for CS leaders?
There's a lot out there now. GGR, gain, grow, retain, to say slow down here, gain, grow, retain, I think is one of the best in terms of variety and audience variety.
We got a great exposure into that last week, the Gain, Grow, Retain Demopalooza. They bring together all kinds of great companies and people in one place. All righty. Well, Mary, this has been awesome. I'm going to close with 2 final questions, and you can have a few more than 2 words for these. If you could make one prediction about the future of customer success, where we're going, what would you say?
I think I touched on it a little bit, but I think CS is going to be more predictive and strategic than it's ever been before. And there is going to be a focus on revenue, but not be the revenue owner. So there's going to be a huge influence opportunity on NRR with the capability to actually bring, more business and predict how to get there.
Definitely see that playing out. A lot of companies are starting to bring to bear technologies to do that. Excited to be a part of that. Cool. Final question here is there anything you'd like to plug with our audience?
Well, my book, I'd love for feedback from folks if you get a chance to read it. And then I'll just once again say the Masters of Science in Customer Experience Management at Michigan State is really phenomenal. It's laid out for working professionals. So it's 15 5-week courses you go through as a cohort. And it's just an opportunity to deep dive into the customer experience world to uncover all, facets and to explore what does the future look like. There's also an employee experience and employee engagement component as well.
Awesome.
So definitely encourage people to check it out.
Great. Well, on that note, Mary, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all of your great insights with our audience and opening up your book of knowledge into the world of CS. So really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. And if you want to come see the Northern Lights, in Minnesota, you can see them pretty good here.
They're clearly going on 24/7 at this time of year. So you got to check them out. Awesome. Thanks so much, Mary.
Thank you.